Good afternoon, everyone. I am Rupert Lee Brown. I'm founder and chief executive of Caxton, and I'm very pleased to be back with you for part 3 of our Around the World in 80 Days series with George Jerjian. For those of you joining us for the first time, George is a retirement coach, author, and creator of the DARE method, a powerful framework that helps people shift from traditional retirement thinking to a life of purpose, passion, and renewed energy, something we all need. Now, after being told he had just 6 months to live, don't worry, he's still with us. George made the bold choice to completely invent his future and now helps others do the same. Last week, Lauren Smith, our chief marketing officer and a true blue Aussie, stepped in whilst I was out of the country and guided you through George's adventures across Australia. From Hamilton Island to Bondi Beach and, of course, the Hunter and Yarra valleys, George really did get a taste of both the landscape and the local produce. In fact, between the South African Reds that we talked about and the Australian Prosecco, sorry, I think that's Prosecco-roo, I think we'll probably need to publish a wine list at the end of this series. So today, we continue the journey with a new destination, a new perspective, and I hope a few more unexpected insights along the way. So welcome back, George.
Thanks, Rupert. Great to be back on the Caxton show.
Well, it's it's always a delight to see you. You're one of the most interesting people to talk to on a webinar. So it's great to have you. Now,
thank you.
New Zealand. You were traveling there from Australia, yes?
Yes.
How did you get to New Zealand? Did you go by boat?
I don't know. I don't think that was an option.
Okay.
And the reason is that on the map it looks very close to Australia, but in fact it's a 3-hour flight from Melbourne to Auckland to the North Island.
Okay.
And there's a 2-hour time difference as well, to boot. So yeah, from Melbourne I went to Auckland. New Zealand is quite different to Australia. It's a much greener island. It's I got a sense more Scottish than anything else. A lot of Scottish connections, as it were. And Auckland is a very it's the largest city in New Zealand, but it's still quite small.
Okay.
You know, there's obviously skyscrapers in the sort of the middle of the city, but everything else then is sort of sprawled out. But very attractive place, quite rainy in the North Island as well.
Okay.
So it was a bit grim. And the
Right.
city centre in Auckland was a little disappointing. And I'm not sure whether it was because it was raining or whatever, but surprisingly, a lot of homeless people, a bit San Francisco-esque in the city centre. That's the only downside that I saw in New Zealand. So I thought I'd throw it in there right up front.
Right. Okay. Let's get the negativity out of the way first.
Exactly.
Yeah. So why did you decide on New Zealand in the first place? Because you could have gone straight, because you went obviously around the world, but why did you decide to take in New Zealand in the first place?
Well, I think, truth be told, after seeing Lord of the Rings and seeing the natural beauty of New Zealand where it was filmed, I thought I couldn't really miss that, being so close to Australia, and who knows if I'm ever going to get a chance to go there again. So I thought I really did want access to see that for myself. That was the primary reason, but also it's wine country. That helps. I thought I'd keep myself open for surprises, which will become evident shortly as we talk about it.
Yes. So so how long were you actually in New Zealand, both North and South Islands?
I had my 2 weeks allocation per country, so 14 days, but I spent maybe 4 days in the north and the rest was mostly in the south, which is where most of the natural beauty is in New Zealand.
Right. And was that on recommendation from your travel agent, or was this your choice, or how did you decide?
It was a combination. It was a combination of things I wanted to see, and what was available. But one of the things that became very apparent from the get-go was that New Zealand, you had to do an awful lot of self-driving.
Okay. Interesting.
It's not a country that has a railway system that goes everywhere. I mean, it does, but it's not like Japan, where you have a train going places every half an hour to an hour. Again, it's the size of Japan, but it doesn't have the infrastructure of Japan.
Right. And presumably it doesn't have the population either of Japan.
Well, now that you mention population, Rupert, New Zealand, Britain, and Japan are more or less the same kind of landmass size.
Okay.
But the population of Japan is 130 million. Britain is about 70 million, say, but New Zealand's only 5 million people.
Goodness me. Goodness me. So did you get to meet all of them?
Pretty much. I think one of the things is that New Zealand is really a small village. Really, everybody knows everybody there. That's the bizarre thing, and you can imagine how parochial it must be if you're living there, and people know you, so to speak.
Yes. So tell me, so you arrive in Auckland. You were there for 4 days. Where did you stay in Auckland?
I stayed in a hotel called Britomart.
Mm-hmm.
Britomart, which is it was modern hotel. It had all the amenities. Everything was organic. Everything was electronic. Curtains were electronic. Lights were electronic. It was a very advanced hotel. Let me put it that way. Mm-hmm. And I had to sort of kind of learn how to do things because I'm not used to having everything electronic in a home. But it was a lovely hotel. Great restaurants, great food, great wines. Can't complain. But I was in Auckland for 2 days.
Okay.
And one of the things that I did in Auckland, as it was raining, couldn't do much else, was to go to the Auckland Museum, which, to learn a little bit about New Zealand and the Maori tradition there.
Mm-hmm.
And I took away two things from that museum. One was how incredibly close New Zealanders and Australians feel towards the mother country historically. And going to these museums, what I saw was that the Australians and New Zealanders gave, as a percentage of their population, had more of their sons die in all the wars of the British Empire, going back to the Boer War, First World War, Second World War, etc. It's quite remarkable how closely tied they are to Britain. That was my feeling that I took away, not just from the Auckland Museum, but also from talking with people. And I was there during the sort of Anzac period. So, that's commemoration again, all that sort of stuff. And the second thing I took away from there was I attended this Maori dance ritual. I think it was an hour long, but it was beautiful. They had all these various different Maori dances. And one of the ladies who introduced the troupe said something that stayed with me. She said, "Please do not applaud."
And why was that?
We don't need, in our tradition, we don't need validation. Okay. If you like what you see and you resonate with it, then just shake your wrists like this.
Fascinating.
And it is fascinating because what I took away from that is that in our culture, we don't realize, we don't see it unless we're outside it. And this is what travel does, is I recognize that how much we're driven by validation from people.
Yeah.
We don't do things because we want to. We do it because we want to be validated by other people. Yes. How mad is that concept?
So that was according to the Maori, is obviously quite bonking mad, but there we go.
Yeah. No, I mean, I'm not saying that we should do everything the Maoris do, but what I'm saying is that, we can take some nuggets of wisdom from these cultures. But yes, those were the two things from the Auckland Museum that I took away.
Okay. And so still in Auckland, what else would you recommend people go and see?
To be honest with you, I'm not too mad about things to do in cities. So I don't really have anything I could sort of throw to you at this point about Auckland, because I very quickly moved to the Coromandel Peninsula, which is, you know, a gloriously beautiful place. And it's used by cyclists for competitions and so on. But having seen how beautiful it is on the rolling hills and the streams and the ocean, I don't know how cyclists can cycle. I mean, you're constantly going to have to be looking around to see the places and trip over something. You wouldn't be able to focus. I wouldn't be able to focus. I had to park the car every couple of miles just to take some photographs. So yeah, beautiful countryside, rolling hills, farms, beautiful looking homes, farm homes. It just looks so elegant, and with the sort of backdrop of the ocean as well. Really quite beautiful.
And these photographs are stunning.
Absolutely. I went to a place on the east side of the peninsula, a town called Hahei. That's Hahei. And I stayed at a converted Methodist chapel with glass stained windows. And it was really quite pretty and beautiful, and with a sort of almost, I think, a Michelin star restaurant there as well. So yeah, it was lovely. Did the cathedral walk there, and also went and spent a couple of hours at a beach known for its hot springs, where you can literally dig yourself into this sort of hole, and hot water comes up. And you just sit in it, and it's really glorious. You come out very refreshed. And the interesting thing is, of course, that later in the day, the ocean comes in, the tide comes in and washes everything out. So it's nice and clean for the next day.
Right. So, what sort of debris is left behind? Maybe I shouldn't ask.
Well,
anyway.
Yeah.
Now, what I do notice is, and you can dispel a myth here. I thought that that New Zealand was volcanic, and that all of the beaches were volcanic sand rather than yellow sand. But from this photograph here, it looks like it's yellow sand.
Yes, but I did come across black sand, volcanic sand. Look at Kaikoura in the South Island. So we'll come to that in a bit.
Fine.
So after 2 days in traveling around the Coromandel Peninsula, I made my way back to Auckland, took a flight down to, don't forget, I had to hand in my Avis car, take a flight down to Wellington, and take an inter-island ferry, a 3-hour crossing down to the South Island.
Right. Okay. Is that a picture of the boat there?
Coming up, that's the one. Yeah, it's huge. I mean, they take cars and everything, and it's a very interesting ferry. It's huge. I've never been in a ferry quite that size, but yeah, it was an interesting 3-hour. I mean, it was interesting because of what you saw on the way to the South Island. It's a nice crossing,
right?
So. Okay. I hit the South Island, and I go to my Avis car rental again, because you can't move around New Zealand without a car.
Right. And was there some sort of deal that you had with Avis, or did you just book them in advance? Or
it was booked in advance by my travel agent, so all that stuff was done. It was quite seamless. I go in Avis, I get my car. You know, obviously, it's whatever cars are available, and you choose from what's available, and off you go. And so I drove for an hour and a half to a place called Nelson in the north part. We arrived in Picton, so I picked the car up from there and drove an hour and a half to Nelson. And I was staying at an Airbnb in Nelson.
Okay.
And the reason I went there was so that I can do hiking on the Abel Tasman Peninsula, a nature reserve. Again, beautiful, glorious place to do hiking, and great place to also do some meditation. I think there's great advantage to solitude, to think things through while you're hiking, and then you stop and you see these beautiful vistas of the ocean through the trees, and it makes your heart sing. Actually, it's so beautiful.
Right.
And running streams, and the color of the water changing constantly from turquoise to blue to aquamarine.
Mm-hmm. And the temperature of the sea? Did you take a dip or?
Not here. Later on, I do. Yes.
Okay. And so, what was the thing that kind of most surprised you, I guess, about South Island?
Well, here it's sort of still at the beginning stages. If we just go back to the previous slide, it's that there are not too many people around.
Okay.
And I was taken by boat to the north part of the Abel Tasman Peninsula. And I was dropped off after 90 minutes at the north part. And I took a sort of 2.5, 3 hour hike all the way down to Medlands Beach, where the boat picked me up and took me back. So it was an interesting combination of traveling by sea, being dropped off, and then coming back. And halfway down, they literally had a cabin and everything's incredibly well marked, as opposed to in South Africa, which it wasn't so well marked.
Mm-hmm.
But in New Zealand, everything is well marked. And they had a hut where you could, if you were stuck for some reason, you could kip there. It was, and it was really a well-constructed hut where you could eat, had utensils and all sorts of stuff.
Right. So
that was the Abel Tasman. And from Nelson, I went on the way to Kaikoura, which is on the eastern side of the island, of the South Island. I had a stop through the Blenheim. I went on the Queen Charlotte Drive, which is exquisite drive by the ocean. And on my way to Kaikoura, I stopped at Omakar Aviation Heritage Center, which Sir Peter Jackson, one of the producers and directors of Lord of the Rings trilogy, put this thing together. And it's ancient sort of World War I aircraft, and it's humongous hangars of these, and German, French, and British aircraft. And why did I go there? It was because I had studied the Spirit of St. Louis book by Charles Lindbergh, because it was a time of his life when he was moving from being a nobody to becoming somebody, with that 33-hour flight across the Atlantic nonstop. And it's a mindset thing too. And let me share with you just very briefly about this. You'll notice on the second photograph, there are 3 people. René Fonck and Charles Nungesser are the 2 people who were World War I ace pilots. And New York bankers were funding these World War I ace pilots to do the flying across the Atlantic. But these people were only used to shooting down planes. They didn't have the mindset to cross the Atlantic. Charles Lindbergh was not a World War I ace pilot. He was a postal flight pilot running the St. Louis to Chicago. But he understood what it would take to make that crossing. Lots of petrol, lots of gas. He needed a fuselage, essentially an oil tanker with wings on it to get him across. So he had calculated that. And he knew any weighty material would bring the plane down. So he had to keep the plane really light. And he built a custom-made one provided by money from St. Louis bankers and insurance people, and he built it in San Diego. Why am I saying this? Because the World War I ace pilots wanted to fly in luxury with mahogany wood and leather seats. And they didn't understand the concept that they were not going to make it across the ocean.
Yeah.
And in fact, they didn't. Fonk's plane crashed on takeoff, and the other two, their plane crashed soon after takeoff in the Atlantic.
Yeah. And so tell me, what is the connection with the Spirit of St. Louis with the Aviation Heritage Centre in New Zealand? Because obviously we're talking here about Atlantic crossings, not
Yes.
not Pacific or otherwise.
Exactly. Well, for me, what was interesting, and this was not planned, this was not on my plan. The landlady in the Airbnb in Nelson suggested this, and I thought, it's on the way. I'm going to pop in and have a look. Now, I knew about these World War I ace pilots. I was not expecting to see their planes and their biography in this place. And these are the people being shown as World War I ace pilots, but actually they didn't succeed where Charles Lindbergh did. So that was what I took away from that for me. It's about mindset. You know, you have a problem, you can't bring the old mind or your old identity into a new situation in life. That was where I was going with that. So moving on from there, I went to Kaikoura, a 2.5, 3 hour drive from the Omaka Aviation Center. And Kaikoura, I stayed at a place called The Factory, which is a former dairy farm, gone industrial chic hotel. And it's in Kaikoura. It was literally 2 minutes from the beach. I had this incredible room, which was more like an apartment villa. And I took a walk to the beach at sunset, and it was, you know, the skies were pink and orange, and the sand was black.
Yes, here we go. So we got footage of it here.
Exactly. So it's extraordinary. It was beautiful. And it's in Kaikoura that I experienced the half a day swimming with dolphins.
Okay.
So, you know, it started off with, 20 dolphins, ended up with 200 dolphins a couple of hours later.
And you were swimming alongside them, or were you just kind of dipping from the boat, or how did that work?
Well, we put on our wetsuits, and there was about, I don't know, 20 of us or something on this boat, and we went in, and I couldn't take my iPhone. I was too fearful that something happened to it. I wouldn't be able to use. I'd be lost. So I rented one of these G9 cameras, or whatever they're called, and went in with that camera. And we were taught what to do. We shouldn't touch these things. We shouldn't touch these dolphins. They're wild, but we could make cooing sounds and swim like them to attract them to us. Now, within minutes of me being in the thing, the camera's on, it's running. I was in there and I was making suggestive sounds to invite the dolphins to me. And 2 dolphins came and circled around me. And to my shock, they had it off right in front of me. And it was on camera. And so later on, when I was back on the boat, I asked the lady who was running the show, I said, this is what happened. She said, they're very promiscuous animals, are the dolphins. And their mating is, they mate with 4 or 5 different dolphins. So there's no parental, there's no legal issues down there.
Right.
And it was interesting, interesting how it takes 11 months for the females who create a crush. The females get together, create a crush. Males have nothing further to do after that point, and they nurture these and their offspring for 2 years, teach them how to hunt, etc. And then they let them go, and they go back on the dating scene again. So that's the life of a dolphin.
Right. Sounds just like humans then.
Probably more Polynesian style, but yes.
Okay.
And from there, I go to Christchurch.
Yes. Actually, talking of the wildlife. What other things did you manage to see whilst you're in New Zealand? Did you any specific bird wildlife or anything else that was of any particular
Actually, I
note?
saw. Yes, that's a good question. I was expecting to see a lot of kiwis, but they're not that easy to see. I did
Right.
end up seeing one or two, but I saw more of them in a museum than I did outside.
Yes.
Um,
Interesting fact or fun fact. What is the collective noun for kiwis? Oh, I've stumped you.
you
It's a
have.
tribe. It's a tribe of kiwis.
You're very good at these collective nouns, Rupert.
Well, it just takes a little bit of research, frankly, before a webinar.
All right. Okay.
If I'm truly honest.
No, but I mean, that's fine. I mean, Christchurch was an interesting place. I didn't stay long. I stayed for a day. I had some friends there who gave me a tour of Christchurch, the city centre and the outside. And Christchurch suffered an earthquake back in 2011, and so a lot of the place had been demolished. But it's amazing how it's made a comeback. It's kind of like a resurrection. These people have come back, and quite quickly as well. But from Christchurch, I took a trans-alpine train. And I think yes, this is the one. Yeah, you can see here video shots of the travels across the South Island from Christchurch to Greymouth, and incredible mountain views, lots of ice blue rivers and lakes, and especially when the train was sort of doing a turn, so you can actually, on the observation deck, you can see the train curving behind, which is quite beautiful.
Yeah.
So yeah, that was an interesting whole day affair. And then the next day I was back on the road to Queenstown, the last stop, where I think we have a question from the audience. Is there any mobile reception in these beautiful landscapes? To be honest with you, I didn't have time to reach out to anybody. I was so engrossed in what I was doing. I'm not actually sure. I didn't have the need to until I actually got into wherever I got in.
Yes.
So I
And
can't
actually
answer that question.
on the subject of mobiles, obviously you have a mobile here in the UK. What did you use in New Zealand? You mentioned your iPhone, but how did you use a different SIM, or how did you buy your airtime?
Right, really good question. That I did my homework before I left, and what I discovered was that I'm with O2, so I was able to use my O2 international bolt-on
Okay.
for Canada, Australia, and New Zealand. Where I was stumped was South Africa and Japan, and the way for me to sort of segue this was to get an eSIM card for South Africa.
Right.
And the same in Japan.
And was that reasonably straightforward to install and use?
Yes, it was easy, but it's, to be honest with you, it would have been easier if I could have done it on O2, because
Right.
you've got to flip-flop back the SIMs in order to make calls and whatever. And it's just unnecessary friction.
Right.
I would have enjoyed a frictionless mobile
Yes.
access across the 5 continents.
Presumably, if you had an eSIM that went across the globe, that would have been the best thing.
Absolutely, yes.
Right.
Totally.
Okay.
I mean, if I had the equivalent of a Caxton card for my phone, that would have been brilliant. Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. And whilst you mentioned the Caxton card, was the Kiwi dollar, the New Zealand dollar, was that one of the currencies that you could load directly onto the card? Okay.
Yeah, I'd already preloaded the 5 currencies I needed for the 5 countries I was traveling to.
Right.
And I had a sterling one. And so, for example, from South Africa, when I finished, I had a few £100 or whatever it was, a few thousand rands from South Africa, which I moved to Australia. And then when I finished with Australia, I still kept the South African. I kept it open with a minimum amount there because I didn't want to lose the history of my travels. So I kept those.
Yes.
But I kept moving any money that was left over from one country to the next. And I still had top up from my UK sterling account.
Okay.
My UK sterling account within Caxton.
Yes, absolutely. Well, it is remarkably easy to switch balances between different currencies on the. But we're here to talk about
that,
New Zealand,
Rupert. To finish off, I
Yeah.
found moving from currency to currency on the Caxton card frictionless. I can't say that about Revolut.
Right.
And that's why I didn't use Revolut, because I was struggling moving it from one to the other. It was not frictionless.
Right.
So I'm noticing we're sort of hampered by time.
We're running short of time. You need to.
So I want to finish off with Queenstown, which was my last destination in New Zealand, and this is where the most beautiful part of New Zealand is, because it's in the south of the South Island. And this is, again, where a lot of films and movies were filmed in this area, because the natural beauty is incomparable. So from there, I took a 5-hour drive to Milford Sound, which is effectively a glacier. I mean, it's a glacier surrounded by these mountains and lots of wonderful waterfalls. And so spent a couple of hours there. And then I flew back to Queenstown, a 45-minute plane ride in a single engine plane over the Southern Alps. And it's the most glorious flight over the Southern Alps. I wish I had done that in Australia over the Great Barrier Reef, but I wasn't able to do it. So I did not want to miss it here.
Yes. It looks stunning, I have to say. And tell me, how long was the flight that you took again?
It was a 45-minute flight from Milford Sound to Queenstown, back to Queenstown.
Right. Okay. And was there a particular?
It was a nine-seater plane.
Right. And
no, it's just a local Glenorchy Airlines. It's a local flight. I mean, it's a flight that's on demand. It's not scheduled.
Right. Okay. Cool. So a question from the audience is: how many people fit in the plane? Is it a
9-seater? It's a 9-seater plane. Yeah, it's bumpy but glorious.
Yes. Yeah. Well, small planes tend to be.
Yes.
I also find them quite nerve-wracking. I think the most nerve-wracking flight I ever took was across the Sound of Helsinki, from Helsinki to Tallinn. Now that was done in an ex-Russian military helicopter, which was, as I said, it was exciting for the first 5 minutes, and then for the other 55, it was pure terror. But there we go. That's for another day. And talking of other days, I think we need to kind of wrap this up now, George.
Yes.
Are there any finally just one or two top tips on New Zealand as a particular destination?
Yes, but like I would say you need to know that you have to drive, and drive a lot. I drove. It was a 6-hour drive technically from Christchurch down to Queenstown, but it took me 8.5, 9 hours, because obviously I stopped at various places to look. So it's a long drive, but it's beautiful drive. So time goes quite quickly because you're looking at beautiful sights around you. But just be aware, New Zealand can only be traversed by car.
Right.
And a Caxton card.
That goes without saying.
Yes.
Good. So I believe that we need to just say one sentence about your courses and books.
I think for the audience, the Caxton audience here, I would say to you, drop into my website. I've got my new book, Odyssey of an Elder, being offered at 25% off for the first 100 people who pre-order it. It's coming out on July the 8th. And also I'm offering to all Caxton card holders my course, which is, I think it's called, it's a taster course. It's called I've lost the title of it.
This
A
is
New
your own
Beginning.
course, George.
It's called A New Beginning for Retirees. It's normally retailed at $29.
A new beginning.
A New Beginning for Retirees. It's being offered for free. Go get it. It's a 1 hour video, audio, and 3 exercises for you to work on.
So we'll post the link of the free course and the book in the Facebook event for people. Now, that was fabulous, George. As ever, we've run over because the tales are fabulous, and you are such an interesting person to talk to.
Thank you.
Next week is Japan, which is the most extraordinary country. Love it to bits. Lots of tales from Japan. And we welcome you all again this time next week. But for the moment, thank you very much. Goodbye from me, Rupert Lee Brown, and George Jerjian. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you.